Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to pose the question to you, is your personality centered around luxury fashion? And I want to talk to you a little bit about 10 scary signs that your entire identity is tied to luxury fashion, and talk about why loving luxury fashion isn't a personality trait. This might be a triggering and touchy video for some of you, but I really hope to have a really open and honest and hopefully exciting conversation in the comment section. So let's talk about it. So the first thing that I want to touch on, and this might piss some of you off, but this particular point is actually what inspired this whole video. A very smart woman, she commented on one of my videos and she raised this point about removing the word luxe shopping from her internet username on YouTube. And she didn't actually realize how by taking that out of her username online, she felt almost a little bit more of her true identity and a little bit more free and not as like tied to the shackles of spending and luxe loving. I'm well aware that there's a lot of us here. I've been guilty of it in the past. Just because you don't know about it, I have started many a username, okay, many a website with the word luxury, luxe loving, or like God knows what else I've come up with in the past. I know a lot of you are gonna have steam coming out your ears right now, but it's just maybe something to consider if you feel like you're in this new space with me, or maybe you're kind of like looking to turn over a new leaf and you do spend a good amount of time online. You know, look at your usernames, look at who you identify as online and how that may be trickling over and bleeding into your real life and your identity. Number 2, a real telltale sign and something to be aware of is how many hours of your day and how much time of your days do you think about luxury shopping? Do you think about handbags? Or do you even spend, you know, you don't even have to necessarily spend a lot of time scrolling online to be thinking about shopping, to be thinking about luxury, to be thinking about the next handbag. I think if you're having trouble partaking in conversations fully within your friendship groups that aren't about luxury or aren't about shopping or aren't about handbags, that's something to consider. I'm going to touch on this a little bit later, but it's this idea that I used to have of wanting more friends that liked handbags and wanting more friends that understood me, so to speak. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, but just how many hours a day do you spend doing this, and where else could you possibly spend that time? So number 3, this is something that I came to terms with in my kind of earlier 20s, and that was, who do you look up to? Who are you inspired by? If you are solely inspired by influencers, or if you just look up to influencers online, or if the first thing that came to your mind when I asked you that question were people for their style, or influencers online for their purchases and how they look and, you know, how they put together outfits or their fashion style, that might be something to look at in your life. Because I know for me, I used to look up to a lot of influencers. I used to be inspired by them, and outside of the fashion space, there wasn't really a lot of women that I had bothered to look up or research or look into their history or what they'd done with their time on this earth to really know who I looked up to and who I was inspired by. Looking into women and looking into, you know, different histories of different women around the world. So that's something that I'm still looking into. That's something I'm still spending my time doing. Every week I try to look into a new woman in history and, you know, what she did and what her life was like, to really get an idea of who I'm inspired by, and not have it be based off some, you know, luxury influencers, just some blog or article online that tells me like the top 10 most influential women. Okay, so number 4, another touchy one. I've talked about this before, why I believe that luxury shopping is not a hobby. And following on from that, and just going to retouch on that point, I think when you label luxury shopping a hobby of yours, when you partake in it, it's something that you do on a regular basis. When you partake in the act of scrolling and you immerse yourself in this world on a daily basis and you make it part of your daily routine, it's a surefire way to fall down a rabbit hole. And if it's something you do on a very regular basis, you've possibly unintentionally made it a hobby of yours. Going back to that point about where you spend most of your time, I understand that some of you may really enjoy scrolling and may really enjoy looking at fashion, but I think it's a bit of that delicate balance, something that I'm definitely trying to be more aware of now. I'm trying to to only look at clothes, only look on websites when I know I need something, when I'm actively looking for something. I'm not just trying to look. And, you know, just being aware that if this is something that you do consider a hobby and you do it on a daily basis outside of your 9-to-5 job or as part of, you know, your full-time job, I think it's really important, and something that I've become aware of, that it's important for me to want to exercise other parts of my brain. I don't just want to turn into a mush, and I found that was something that was happening when I was putting a lot of my brain capacity to scrolling and looking at clothes. Okay, so number 5, going back to that point that I touched on a little bit earlier, and that is, you know, I used to love finding friends, and I used to come on here and talk to you about how I wish I had more friends that love designer bags, and I wish I had more friends that love luxury fashion. But what I've come to realize now is, again, that hasn't really changed. I still don't have any more friends in my real life that love luxury fashion, but what I actually realized and come to realize is that I really appreciate that diversity, and I really appreciate the diversity within my friendship groups. And again, going back to what we talked about before about exercising other parts of our brains and, you know, not living in an echo chamber. It would be so unfortunate. I kind of feel like I took some of my friends for granted in that sense, where it would be so unfortunate if all of my friends liked and loved and knew absolutely everything that I knew, because where would my diversity come from? Where would the exercising of my brain come from? I'm actually really grateful that I have a diverse range of people in my life, and they're not all luxury fashion obsessed, because it allows me to learn and be exposed to subjects and topics and thoughts that I wouldn't be exposed to otherwise. So number 6, another touchy one. This is something that I came to terms with, that not everything that you use or wear needs to have a designer logo on it. And I don't just mean designer, like legitimate designer pieces. I used to just love anything that had a logo on it. Like, oh God, let me go get it. You might love this, and this might totally be your vibe, but it's not my vibe anymore. And it's just something that I've become aware of now. This is an example of that, okay? So this is a coaster that says Hermes on it. It's not like a legitimate Hermes coaster. It's just a coaster that I got from a gift shop, and I spoke about it a few years ago in a Christmas wish list video. And at the time, I loved them. I thought they were so cool, and like, oh my God, it's amazing, like raving fangirl. But now I've come to realize, and again, like I have these in like Louis Vuitton, Dior, Chanel, and like this is just my own personal thing. I don't mean to offend any of you. Like, I feel tacky covering my house in logos and, you know, wearing shirts and clothing with designer logos on it, even whether or not they're designer or not. It's just not really my vibe, and I found it to be a way that I was unintentionally tying my identity to luxury fashion, because I just felt the need to have my whole house smothered in brand name, whether it be real or just the actual words or the logos. It just was getting a bit excessive for me, and I think there's just a bit of a fine line that I stepped over a few years ago, and I only have now realized that it's not really my vibe. So number 7, this is something that I found myself in personally, and that is, when you really think about it, that's where a very large and very dominant part of your knowledge lies, within that luxury fashion space. And again, like, I think that's great that you're very knowledgeable. If you're very knowledgeable about luxury fashion and about handbags or clothing, I think that's amazing. Last year, when I was quite determined to be a full-time luxury influencer, and, you know, I was like, you know what, I'm going to set my mind to this, and I'm going to pour all my time, all my extra time into being the go-to girl, the go-to luxury influencer. You want to know about handbags, you want to know about luxury fashion, you come to me. That's what I wanted to be. That is what I strive for. So I spent a large percentage of my days just researching luxury fashion brands, researching different leathers, canvas, you know, materials, stitchings, brand facts, brand history. And what I quickly came to realize was, other than the fact that, like, I'm sorry, but I'm never gonna be the go-to handbag lady. Like, I actually found it really boring. I don't care about the 700 different, you know, different bag names and styles and the different stitchings, and not where my heart lies. And by thinking that I had to be the authority in the luxury handbag space and just luxury space in general, the kind of go-to knowledge queen, my knowledge and my expertise and my awareness in other areas and in broader topics and topics that I now deem kind of important, that I want to know about and become aware about, definitely lacked. And, you know, the more I started to surround myself with people, and people in different circles, just outright like really successful people that I admire, I quickly realized that when we're not surrounded by my regular kind of friendship groups, I was having trouble contributing to conversations. For example, at a lunch or a dinner table, I was having trouble connecting and contributing to conversations that weren't about fashion. Let's just put it like that. And that was something that I now value more importantly. And, you know, just for instance, this past week I've been looking into the world of Jung and various other thought leaders in that space. That's kind of where I'm at, and I've now realized that for so much of my time my brain was just trying to soak up all this luxury fashion information and news and gossip and releases, that I really slipped in the other areas of knowledge that I now deem very important. Again, I understand that some people's platforms, that's how they choose to use their platforms and that's what they choose to share. One example of someone who I really love in the luxury space, I'm not really in that luxury space anymore, but I still love to see Erica from Erica's Girly World, her stories, because even though she posts luxury influencer type content, but she broadens her knowledge and she actually shares other things on her stories, and that's like so much more what I'm interested in. I love to see people's stories featuring their lives and, you know, news articles from around the world, or just interesting little factoids, as opposed to just, you know, which handbag do you like better or things like that. So number 8, a real telltale sign I think is if you've lost passion for a lot of other areas in your life. If you feel like the only passion that you now have is in consuming and buying luxury fashion and looking at handbags, if you feel like you've lost a lot of other passion for the other areas in your life, or things that you used to feel a spark of joy for, that's something that I think might be worth looking into and considering. And number 9, another one. I used to be guilty of this. You know, are you constantly seeking approval for your purchases? Okay, unboxings. Are you... No longer do unboxings in that sense unless I'm sharing a personal experience about the service or a particular aspect of something that I feel like you really need to know. But try to change my mind. I genuinely would love for you to try to change my mind. Try to, you know, broaden my way of thinking, but I just now feel that I'm not serving you in any way. If anything, it's just feeding my own ego and the own validation that I used to seek for buying. Now when I buy for me. And if you guys still want to see that, maybe let me know, but like really I just don't feel the need to show you as much anymore of what I buy, like in terms of it being a whole I don't feel I need that validation, or I don't seek that approval that I once used to look for. And lastly, number 10, I would ask you to ask yourself, how would you feel, how do you think you would feel if for whatever reason you couldn't continue buying luxury fashion? Or if someone said to you, okay, you need to hand over all your luxury fashion, give it to me now, you can't do this anymore. Would that be distressing for you? Like, could you imagine a life without this? This was something that was really hard for me to come to terms with. Would this be really distressing for you? Would you be able to imagine a life without handbags, without spending money in the luxury fashion space, without watching luxury influencers, without doing any of this? Would you find that really distressing? You know, and I know it may sound dramatic, but would you be able to live without it? And if you asked me this a few years ago, I would say, hell to the mother effing no, what a sick, twisted joke. Like, why would you even ask me that? But my answer is very different. As much as I still love fashion and I still enjoy the handbags that I have, it's not at all a like be all and end all thing. I used to think that it was kind of like a personality trait. How much of your description of yourself is tied up in your luxury fashion love, or your love for fashion or clothing or shopping or buying or spending or handbags? My identity was really tied up in not only luxury fashion but also YouTube, in the sense that if my channel wasn't doing well, I wasn't doing well. If my numbers weren't up, if nobody was watching my videos, I felt like stupid. And, you know, if my channel wasn't doing well, I wasn't doing well. If my numbers were shit, I was shit. I think whether or not influencers in general are brave enough to admit that, I feel that a large percentage of them probably feel that same way. And I think it's just human nature for a lot of us. So I'd love to hear all your thoughts on my list today and how you feel about the points that I raised. And if there's any more points that you want to add to, feel free to share all your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much for being with me in today's video. And if you think that you've ever maybe unintentionally or intentionally tied your identity to something, I would love to hear all your thoughts in the comments down below. Please feel free to share those with me and with us. Thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna have another one linked for you right here. If you haven't had enough of me just yet, feel free to join me over there. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in my next one.